tuning in. Dr. Judy WTF. Can you see me, or is there a blank screen, or am I actually on live?
Yep, you are actually on live.
Okay, thank you so much for joining in. And tonight's show is about children's mental health and the mind map, mind mapping for children. And before we get started, I just want to make an announcement. I'm getting a promo here for from Digital X Boss Babes. Head over to the Facebook fan page, Digital X Boss Babes. That's DIGITALX BOSSBABES, and share the promo post there. They're trying to get the word out about my mind map system so we can get it into the school systems around the country. And please share the post if you can. Thank you so much for that, Alexandria. I really appreciate you. And let's just jump into it because the mind map is a system of healing. And if you can put it up there so the people can see it, and I will mind map the mind map. So the 9 panels, let me know when you got the picture of that up there.
We've got it.
Okay. And also, if you could promote that Boss Babes page, I would appreciate that too. Is the picture up there? I can't really see it.
Yes, it is.
Okay, why can't I see it? So
Let me
weird.
see.
All right, maybe you can click it on there. And I can
There we
actually,
go.
thank you very much. And also, when you have a moment to promote the Boss Babes fan, yes, there it is. Perfect. Okay, so this um, this Facebook fan page is helping me promote mental health for children and specifically getting the mind map into the school systems. And so let's get the mind map up there. And first, I want to say that we are all children, or at least we have all been children. Some of us are still children. But the point of the mind map is not only to help reverse psychopathology and get at it at the root cause, but also to prevent psychopathology in children so that they don't have to come to people like me for therapy in the future and heal their childhood wounds. So let's go through it and talk about what is a childhood wound and why it is so important for children to understand the mind map. Well, first of all, it is a visual thing, so every child can understand it, including my grandson Alexander, who is in the video that we are promoting. And at age 4, he was able to break it down to the following. Grandma, the first panel is the boo-boo. It hurts there. And second panel is how much it hurts and the infection around it. And the third panel is how we make ourselves feel bad, the encoding, what we encode about the wounds of childhood. The fourth panel is how we all go crazy when we're wounded. The fifth panel is about how we defend when we're wounded and we don't want to um, uh, have wounds coming our way, so we roll up in little balls and we defend. And the fifth panel is how we break down and we explode when we get wounded. And of course, if we're lucky, we can have a breakthrough instead of a breakdown, or maybe a breakdown will lead to a breakthrough. Ultimately, what we want to have happen from this system of healing is panel 789. According to Alexander, the paradigm shift is when we are all coming together and we all want to feel good about ourselves. And then panel 8 is about teamwork, and panel 9 is about peace. So that's the mind map version from a child's point of view. It is in the video if you do purchase it. This video is the first basic video that I made several years ago. And yes, my grandson is in it, and now he's a really big boy. I was hoping that he'd be on the show today, but he is with his daddy, hopefully playing basketball or something fun. So let's get right into it. What are these childhood wounds? If you put up panel number 1 again, you could see that there is light in the background. And what is this light? It's our potential. It's every child's potential. We come into the world with the best of our best, and we inherit and also get reinforced by our parents' love and nurturance and education and teachings and wisdom. And that's the best that we come with, and then we inherit it from our parents. However, we also come in with um, shadows. Soon the shadows take over, and instead of blossoming into the very people we were meant to be, this all goes askew, awry, haywire, and these blocks, which I call the wounds of childhood, infiltrate the child, penetrate to the core of the child, and stops the growth process and creates all of the other parts of the process that I just described and I will describe again. So the 5 childhood wounds that I primarily concentrate on are wounds of physical abuse. Obviously, if you're slapping, hitting, uh, in any way hurting physically your child, you're going to have reactions to the wound, and you're going to have impressions upon that child of not such a favorable world. So I don't really recommend, if you're a parent or you're a wannabe parent, I don't recommend hitting and disciplining as a form of um, child rearing. I think there are better ways to go about it, like positive reinforcement, like earnership, uh, like rewarding a child for their behavior and their character, pointing out areas where they can improve, and then helping them to improve those areas so that they don't get stuck with the negativity, but not punishment in the form of physical abuse. Now, just as bad as physical abuse is verbal abuse, because it leaves a different kind of scar. So if you're telling your child that he or she is stupid or lazy or incompetent or a loser, or even worse, should never have been born, you are really scarring your child's psyche, and the damage can be so extensive that it'll take a lot of psychological unraveling for that child to um, not identify with those horrible, horrible messagings that, again, thwart their light, that thwart their ability to be the best of their best. So please stay away from name calling, put downs, anything that makes a child feel less than. Not a great idea. And actually, just to back up a little bit with the system, the best thing that you could do for your children is heal your own childhood wounds first, so you don't put them, meaning project them, onto your own children. That is not a way to raise children, to be in a state where you're wounded and you're projecting and you're punishing your children for all of the failings of your multi-generational heritage. So that's why we call it the multi-generational system gone wrong, because we don't want to pass it on to the next generation. And the mind map is a way to ensure that your child does not pass this with inward and then onward. So what is panel number 2? From a child's point of view, it's the primitive brain. It is the brain that doesn't yet have words, so it's pre-cognitive, pre-verbal, and it's a reactor. It's the amygdala. It is part of the brain that is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And so what do children do when they're attacked, when they're unsafe, when they are in a place of dread and unsafety is they react. They either shut down, they freeze, they can't flee, right? They don't have the ability to leave their home. They can fawn and be passive, or they can uh, uh, go into a kind of a shutdown, a flight where they shut down. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn where they're passive. Going back to panel one and just covering some more of these childhood wounds, we have the physical abuse that we talked about, the verbal abuse, which is very, very harsh, and children get impressed with horrible messagings by their parents. And by the way, these messagings don't always have to be in words. They can be non-verbal messages. Like if you don't engage with your child, if you are emotionally neglectful, which is another word, another wound, it's the same thing as telling your child that you're not interested, that they're not special, that they're not important, that you don't care. So emotional neglect is another form of child abuse. Yet another form of child abuse is when parent tries to control and manipulate their children through threats. You know, if you don't do this, then this and this will happen. So molding their child into a little robot, a compliant robot, might be an example of child abuse. And then that gets into the narcissistic abuse, where the parent lacks empathy. And of course, if you're hitting your child and verbally abusing your child and trying to control your child, you probably lack empathy. That doesn't mean all the time, but you know, when it gets too far and the feeling is cauterized, the feelings of the parents are no longer able to function as a source of warmth, as a support and connection to the child, a source of love, then the child starts feeling very alone and confused in the world with no sense of a rudder. The fifth abuse that I want to bring up is sexual abuse. So sexual abuse obviously is a combination of physical abuse because it's violating boundaries. It could be very painful to the child, and it'll leave the child definitely um, compromised in the area of trust in the world. I want to get a little bit further into this because what I find with my child abuse cases is that it's not only the abuse that takes place, it's the way the abuse is handled. So if your child is sexually abused and then you try to deny it, or you tell the child not to speak about it because it'll ruin the family image, you try to in some way sweep it under the rug because it's a family member that abused and you don't want the information out there. This is a real betrayal of the child. And so understand that all of these types of abuse can be construed as a sense of betrayal of trust, a betrayal of making the world a safe place for your child. And then if you go to panel number 3, you will see there a DNA strand, which is the strand of encoding. So why do I represent encodings as a DNA strand? Because DNA is straight up information. And so if you're abusing or neglecting your child, then they're storing information, just like in a DNA strand is stored information. Your child is storing what I refer to as negative core beliefs like I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, I'm lazy, I'm dirty, I'm not even mattering on the planet, I should never have been born. And these are the types of things that again, people go to therapy to try to reverse the effects of the wounds of childhood on their psyche and their negative core belief, because core beliefs run deep. And I know that there are all kinds of ways that people try to approach core beliefs, like cognitive behavioral therapy is one of them, which is something that I use after we explore the wounds of childhood, because cognitive behavioral therapy doesn't address the cause. It addresses the cognitions that are formed. And it's very hard to wipe out cognitions when they're deeply rooted in trauma, and they're deeply rooted in the child's belief system. A lot of people have reported to me that they try positive affirmations, they write little positive messages on their I don't know, sticky notes, and post them all over their bathroom mirror, kitchen sink, in their car, and on their desk, and wherever. And it doesn't seem to help. And I want to talk about why it doesn't seem to help. It doesn't seem to help because what's more potent? A little sticky note that says, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I matter, I'm important, or a parent that says, you don't matter, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're a loser. Okay? So, hands down, the parental message goes deeper, and that sticky note, as it always does, falls off of the wall and the mirror and the car mirror and wherever you post it. It just doesn't have a potent effect on that horrible message. And why are we talking about this? Why am I so passionate about getting it in the school system? Is because when children are exposed to this kind of trauma, um, if they have enough psychoeducation and the message is educated in a way that is age appropriate to them, sort of like what I was talking about with my grandson calling the first panel a boo-boo. Well, we could translate it into an emotional ouch if you want to put it more in child layman's terms. And then the reaction being the ow, that really hurt my feelings, or that really hurt me physically, or that really made me feel scared, or that made me want to run away, or that made me want to shut down. Those are the kinds of things that you need to educate your children about. Why? Because by knowing who done it, how it affected them, they can have an ability and an educational tool to help them identify the cause of it and not with the effects. So, for example, if mommy calls little Kathy stupid, then she can somewhere in her mind, through her education, through the mind map education, understand that those are not the best parenting skills. Now, the challenge is always this. When you teach the mind map in the school system or anywhere, you have to teach the parents. And if the parents are not amenable to it, it's a problem, because the parents are going to try to cancel out that education. Nonetheless, I think the children are owed that education to know that just because a parent says that they're stupid or lazy, it might mean that they have to do some self-reflection and do their homework or get up earlier. But if it is a characterological assassination, they need to know that that is not healthy, and that is not okay, and that is not a way for a parent or any adult, whether it be a teacher or parent or grandparent or aunt, uncle, or anyone, to treat a person. So children have to understand that these childhood wounds not only are put upon them, but they come from mommies and daddies that also have ouches and also have areas where they did not do their own healing. And so once you help that child have some space in their head around it, instead of thinking, at face value, they don't matter, they're stupid, they're nothing, then you have an opportunity to source the information and let the child have a chance at identifying the problem, which is the messaging and the childhood wounds that then they incorporate, and help them get some space so that they don't identify um, with it. So let's get some examples going, or if anybody wants to call in with an example of some level of child abuse and how the mind mapping for children can help with this, please do. Or if you have a question in the chat room, any questions in the chat room?
Not yet.
This is really, really important because, yes, I know that we are all suffering, but think about it. If we're suffering and we don't heal our wounds and we pass it down to the next generation, what kind of next generation are we actually creating? And then if they don't heal, what kind of generation is going to come after that and after that and after that? And so we teach reading, we teach math, we teach science, we teach, I don't know what else, art, music, PE. We teach a lot of things in school. It's time that we psycho-educated our children early on. So let's see how this would work. Let's say um, Tommy um, bullies little Susie and tells Susie that she's ugly. Now, if Susie was raised in a household where she wasn't called ugly and she had a lot of confidence, she'd probably not internalize it and just walk away from the little boy and say, you know what, don't talk to me like that. I'm not interested in listening to uh, this kind of treatment, and not internalize it. However, if Susie's mom called her ugly, guess what would happen? So let's go through it. The wound would be activated, okay? The reaction of shame and pain and low self-esteem would be activated, panel 2, reaction. The encoding would be activated. So now instead of thinking that the bully is just being a bully, she believes the bully and thinks that she's actually ugly. And now this encoding is activated. And now we go on a very, very rough ride. So wound, reaction, and coding. In this case, the wound of an insult, the reaction, the pain and the shame and the embarrassment and all of that. And then the encoding, which is just like a repeat of mom saying, you know, little Susie, you're really ugly. Look at your ears. Look at your nose. You know, you're too short. You're too fat. You're too skinny. Your head's too big. Your head's too small. Your butt is too little. Your butt is too big. You know, whatever the insult is, children are exceptionally sensitive. And, you know, this goes not only for young children, but through teenage years and onward. And so what it activates is panels 4, 5, 6. So now little Susie is breaking down into chaos. She doesn't feel secure. She feels that she wants to not go to school in the morning, and she's living in a chaotic world. Where is she going to go now to school? What if somebody else tells her she's ugly, or worse? And then the defense mechanisms kick in. So what happens to little Susie? Maybe she gets a stomach ache, or maybe she gets a headache, or maybe she shuts down and just sleeps in and won't get up in the morning, or maybe she uh, sucks her thumb and regresses to a younger stage and age. So when people are hurt, they will regress. And so out of all of that, if the bullying gets worse, or little Susie's internal environment, home environment gets worse, then Susie might have a breakdown. And we've all certainly heard of horror stories where the bullies bully so hard and so dramatically and cruelly that children actually take their own life. So the biggest breakdown that can happen here is suicide. So if you get the drift here, I'm actually talking about the most profound suicide prevention tool that I know of, which is the mind map. Okay? So if you can prevent Susie from internalizing the message that the bully conveyed and prevent her from breaking down because of it, then you've just prevented her from grave depression or worse, suicidality or other forms of coping skills that children engage in, such as drugs, sex, and rock and roll, because we all know that children whose boundaries have been broken by, let's say, sexual abuse are more prone to be penetrated. And so their defense mechanisms don't work as well in the area of their sexuality. So instead of guarding their sexuality breaks down. And now we're talking about teen pregnancies, and we're talking about all kinds of venereal diseases and so on and so forth. So STDs, everything that's now causing chaos and breaking down upon the child. So the mind map is such an important tool for the prevention of, let's just go through what we talked about. Obviously, suicide, uh, prevention of breaking down psychologically and having a depressive episode, uh, breaking down into extreme forms of anxiety, developing phobias, not wanting to go to school. I know of cases where children avoid bathrooms in school because they've been molested there, and then now they don't want to go into the bathroom and they're afraid of bathrooms, and they generalize this behavior. So it is so essential that children learn the mind map so that they have some sort of a psychological immunity to life, and not only the life of the bullies and other students and teachers who could insult them and cause damage, but also um, parents who do not have the skills to fortify their children and give them the proper light, so to speak, meaning what does it take to form a healthy human psyche? It takes a lot. It takes a mother who takes the time to have the proper prenatal vitamins, and it takes a father who's going to nurture the nurturer, usually the mother, who is going to create a safe environment for the baby so that when the baby's born, she can breastfeed and nurture and put the baby on a sleeping schedule and be attuned to the baby's needs. If the baby pees or poops or the temperature is too hot or cold, attend to their colds and flus and earaches and so on, and their fears and noises. And so there's so much happening to children that parents are really the buffer. They're supposed to be the ones that provide a safe, defensive environment for the child. And if they don't, then the children are vulnerable to being penetrated by horrible messages from the outside world and rejections and traumas and sexual abuse and so on. And so really, if you look at it that way, you can look at it from the point of view of prevention of depression, of anxiety, of sexually transmitted diseases, prevention of acting out with drugs, sex, shutting down, developing phobias, developing paranoia. Um, I think I mentioned suicidality, but I'll mention it again because you could see where this is going if we don't get on it and we don't have the proper psychological techniques. So what the mind map looks like for children is a mind map education system that includes my video that I created many, many, many years ago. And it could include teaching of the mind map through the educational system or one of the team therapists. And we can educate both parents to prevent their children from being infiltrated with physical, verbal, sexual abuse, neglect, control, smothering, teach them about narcissism, teach them about the opposite of narcissism, which is attunement and empathy, and certainly teach children at all ages, all age levels, what to do if somebody hurts them, if somebody neglects them, if somebody squeezes them out of a social circle and it activates their feelings of not being important enough, not mattering. They can go back to the root cause of that and see that they're now being triggered by something that happened back in their past and back in their experience. So children are smart. They get it. The mind map is visual, so you don't have to use a lot of words for teaching. And the techniques are just really following the yellow brick road. Children are very, very attuned to stories. And one of the things that I have my patients do at the end of their mind map journey is to mind map themselves. And one of the tests that children could do at the end of their psychoeducational process, and parents can do the same thing also about their own childhood, is tell a story, sort of like, I'll just make one up. Once upon a time, there was a little boy, and his name was Sam. And Sam was born into a family of alcoholics. Unfortunately, mom and dad were drunk all the time, and they were very neglectful, and they didn't come home some days. And sometimes brothers and sisters went for a day without food, and sometimes the older brother had to take care of the younger siblings. And so unfortunately, little Sam grew up to feel that he had to be a caretaker of everyone, and that he had to uh, be the person that other people looked up to, even though he was still worthy of being a child. So the messaging is that he had no time for himself. He could not, the story goes that Sam did not have time to live his life as a child. He had to be a reactor to everything around him. He had to make sure that the dishes were done and the little siblings got their meals. And instead of paying attention to his own life and his own homework, he had to suspend his very own childhood. And he concluded that other people were much more important than he was. And he concluded that he only mattered when he was a human doing, and he was not important as a human being and not valued as such, only for what he did for other people. And so now, if he can mind map that far, then he can understand why it is that when he is around friends that they can bitch him around and tell him what to do, and how easy and compliant he is, and how he feels like he's only valued for what he does and not who he is. So he can understand the root cause of why he's getting involved in friendships that are not balanced, friendships where he feels used, friendships where he feels neglected. So every every child deserves to know their own story. Every child deserves to know why they're in chaos. So little Sam can say, and after I went through that horrible trip, I began to feel very, very anxious, and my world started to fall apart, and I didn't know how to regulate my emotions. And at night, I'd get very anxious, and I didn't know how to handle things and organize my own homework, although I did everything around the house. And then As a way to escape all of my feelings, I resorted to video games. And as soon as I got my hands on a cell phone, I would just be in the game and I would tune out and I would defend myself and I wouldn't want to face the reality of the world. And for an hour or two, I would lock myself in the bathroom in spite of all of the kids needing me. I just had to do an escape mechanism just to keep my sanity. So now little Sam can relate it back to the wound of the alcoholic parents and the childhood neglect and the parentified child and the being valued for being a doer instead of a beer. And then Sam has a chance to break through this, and instead of identifying later on as just a human doer and a people pleaser, he could start to see that he has different choices and that his choices were not only um, um, limited by his the deck of cards that he was dealt at childhood. Any questions in the chat room? Anybody want to
We
make some
did
comments?
just get a question in the chat room a few minutes ago. The question
Okay.
is, I used to get blamed for everything growing up, even stuff my parents did. Now, when
Yes.
my daughter messes up, I feel this weird need to jump in and fix it or control the whole thing. Is that my childhood trauma talking?
It is your childhood trauma talking, because if you could heal that part of yourself, you could still help your daughter fix it, but you don't have to fix it for her. Because I think because you were so vulnerable as a child, you didn't have anybody to help you. And so now you're not giving your child a chance to come up with some skills of his or her own to fix it. So like it's almost like you're the child, so you're traumatized, so you don't want to be in that horrible state, so you want to fix it fast. And so fixing it isn't just taking away the problem, it's helping your child to resolve the problem. That's a better fix, because now we're teaching the child something. We're not just saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you're hurting. Let me just come and hug and kiss you and wipe up the tears." You can have a conversation like, "What happened? How did you interpret that? Um, what did that person say that hurt your feelings? How were you triggered?" So you can do a little bit of mind mapping with your child instead of immediately falling into the pit hole of your being reactivated by feeling sad or being traumatized or feeling left alone or whatever it is that you're going through. And that is why this mind mapping for children in the school system or even in a family system, home education, is so important, so that you as a parent can learn it and then, number one, teach it to yourself and then apply it to your children and learn to prevent this from happening to your children by understanding where the system went wrong. Because ultimately, what I've created here is a system gone right to apply to systems gone wrong that are predicated on wounds and reactions and encodings and chaos and defense mechanisms and breakdowns. Okay, any other questions in the chat room, or anybody want to call in? This is a really, really important topic. I know it doesn't sound all that tempting to watch this because it's about mind mapping for children, but think about it. We're all children. We were children. We have children. We're going to have grandchildren. I have grandchildren. We're all going to be part of children, even if we don't have children of our own. We're going to interface with children. And if we see a child collapse into chaos because we've done something to activate them, even if we didn't mean it, we could start to understand that there's something more to it. So let's say a child asks you for a glass of water and you're a teacher and you don't respond, and they ask you twice or three times and you don't respond, and their thing is they feel neglected. Well, they're going to think that they're not important. And pretty soon, what will happen to that child is he or she will stop asking or start acting out, or some kind of reaction will result. But if you're a teacher who knows that that child may be triggered in that department, then you can respond and attune and be there for the child, and give that child a little bit more than maybe the trigger of feeling ignored and going down the tubes of chaos because of the trigger.
We have
So,
a follow-up question from that same patient.
mhm.
They ask, no one ever showed me how to self-soothe or feel safe as a kid. Now when my daughter gets upset, I sometimes say something cold without meaning to.
Okay, well that's very, very astute of you and very self-reflective of you to even be saying that. You observe that about yourself. So good for you that you're able to identify your reaction, because why is the show called Dr. Judy WTF? Because we are repeating things, just like Freud said. We are the repetition principle come to uh, in live form. And so if your daughter is being treated like you were being treated, then you're simply repeating the past upon her. So now you've got to go back inward, or call us and I'll work with you or assign you to somebody on the team and heal the childhood wounds that were internalized by you, that are now being projected on your child. So now it's time for you to face your own childhood wounds of neglect or hurt or insult and work them through. So in panels 4, 5, 6 of the therapy, we actually work through that by identifying the pain. We identify the breakdown that our parents caused us and all of the anger and sadness and disappointment behind that. And instead of breaking down again, we have the opportunity to push back on the pain and get it out, because panel 6 is really a representation of explosions or implosions. You could see it's sort of like a war going on. So the two meeting points is where we explode, or if we don't explode, then we're turning the anger inward and imploding. In therapy, we do neither explosions or implosions, we do unloads. Don't explode, don't implode. You unload your pain, you unload your anger, you unload your tears, you unload your trauma, you unload the betrayals, you unload the past, so that you're not pregnant with it, okay? You're not carrying it, you're not burdening yourself with it and then projecting it onto the next generation. It's such an important educational tool, and it's so important that the world go through this, because hopefully this will live way past my life, and that future generations will be able to access this when I'm dead and gone and follow the yellow brick road to healing. And so once we get through the panels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because panels 1, 2, and 3 represent the past, 4, 5, 6 represent the trauma and the drama of the here and now. And let's go to panel 7, 8, 9. This is where it all starts coming together. So you can see that healing is a paradigm shift. So from a mind map perspective and a perspective of childhood healing, the child has a clear lens of perception. So when he or she looks in the mirror, she doesn't see an ugly, stupid, meaningless, unimportant child. She or he sees a clear-sighted human being who is worthy of being surrounded by love is worthy of being in a community that brings out the best of his or her best, is worthy of being the light, and is worthy of growth. So panel 7 is sort of like the light, the truth, clear-sightedness, growth, synergy. Synergy, my favorite word. What's synergy? Is when you surround yourself with people who are growth partners. 1 + 1 is greater than the sum of two parts. So it's greater than 2. So now instead of that child growing up and picking narcissists and picking people who reject and hurt them and make them feel less than, they're picking partners who enhance them and can grow with them and can synergize with them so that they can go on a healing journey with them, so they can climb the evolutionary scale of healing. You see, the new DNA is a DNA of steel, and it is immersed in tranquil, clean waters. It's sprouting from a healthy planet Earth. And you can see that the people are helping each other climb the ladder, rather than panel 3, where people are disjointed and they're not participating with each other. Panel, that's the old misencoded DNA. See, people are just hanging around and sitting around in a toxic haze of a world, and the misinformation is poisoning them. And in panel 7, in panel 8, they're in clear waters, they're in a beautiful, tranquil environment, they have energy, they can climb the ladder of success spiritually, physically, health-wise, mentally, on every level, mind, body, soul. So this aspect of healing is now available to them, and I call that recoding. So the first encode is the botch job, where you don't get it right, and then we've got to tear down all of that mess, and then we have to recode it so that you can have that paradigm shift and then build something new and beautiful, and then create a different kind of world for yourself. So instead of repeating upon your children that which you learned from your mother, your father, your ancestors, you can now be proactive and show your healed self and all of that which goes with it, which is the empathy and the psychoeducation and the patience and the willingness not to just jump in and fix everything all the time, but actually assist your child in fixing it themselves with the right tools. Because you know the old saying, it's better to teach somebody how to fish than give them the fish. And speaking of which, happy Easter, everybody, and happy Passover to everyone, and whatever holiday you're celebrating. This is a time of freedom, and we definitely don't want to be trapped in our own defense mechanisms and our own psychopathology, so to speak. And this is a time where we can break out of that psychopathology and be the cause of better outcomes for your life. And you can always order my book, 𝗦𝗛𝗠𝗏.com, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect, on Amazon, or if you want, we can get you the PDF copy. You're always welcome to get a free consultation with a team member, find out about our system of healing. And don't think this is a casual, well, maybe someday thing, because the longer you stay in this pit of chaos, defenses, and breakdowns, the more you're going to ingrain yourself in horrible habits and anxieties and depressions and repetitive patterns, and picking horrible relationships that don't further your life, and being a horrible partner in a relationship. So it behooves everybody, if you're out there taking all kinds of classes, photography, I don't know, classes in art and music, whatever you're doing, don't forget your class in mind map. It's really, really important. And you might find that it'll enhance your ability to be a better musician or a better artist or a better teacher or better anything. So please feel free to reach out. And I thank everyone. If there are no other questions in the chat room, anything else?
Nothing else.
Okay, I really appreciate you being here, and I will see you next time. Good night, everybody.